Welcome to the App Clinic at the brand new time of 10:30 a.m. Mountain View time.
Absolutely.
My name's Reto Meier.
And I'm still asleep. But if I were awake, I would be Ian Nee Lewis.
Excellent. And today we're going to take a look at photography and camera apps in the App Clinic. We've got a good range of apps to look at. In fact, these are them. We've got EyeEm, PicsArt, Glimmr, and Camera Zoom FX.
Now, I've really been looking forward to these, Reto, because I know we're both photographers, or I should say you're a photographer, and I own a camera.
I think it's probably fair to say I also own a camera. Actually, our erstwhile engineer, Mr. Daniel Pham, is probably, I think it's fair to say, a photographer.
That's quite true. He takes all the pictures for our promotional videos.
That's true, and in fact, I was so confident in his ability that the photos that we're going to look at, I actually sent him around this morning with our demo device to take some photos of stuff, so we would have some decent examples.
Excellent.
To show people. So,
and just to be clear, our demo device today is a Galaxy Nexus.
It is
right?
indeed, yes.
All right.
Hey, I don't want to disappoint you guys, but I really just took photos of the studio. So maybe the viewers will have a good time looking at some behind-the-scenes photos of how messy it really is in here.
All right. Well, I assume that they're going to be highly artistic and well-filtered photos of our studio. So I guess we should kick off. So
let's do it.
As per usual, we're going to go through each of the apps, give them sort of a 2 to 5 minute overview before having a look at what we think are the keys to making a really great camera and photography app, and some links to some developer resources that should help you to be able to take your app to that next level. So let's start off with EyeEm, and this is a team that has actually worked with some of our developer advocates over in London. I think Rich Hindman, however we're deciding to say his name today, has been working with these guys and giving them some advice. So let's take a look and see how it looks.
Absolutely. By the way, I noticed the QR codes are back. Check that out.
Indeed, they never
Someone
left.
always complains when we don't have the QR codes.
This is true. Yeah.
I'm getting used to it now.
Yeah, I noticed that our chroma keying is slightly off as well, so we don't have quite the background that we should there. But
oh, is that what happened? I thought maybe you just chose to
leave it
get
off?
rid of the.
No, well, maybe
because Roman was,
That's true, but Roman is a trendsetter, and I don't think I'm quite up to that level.
It's true. We are always following Roman. In fact, all I did, so I did the intro video for today.
Done, by the way.
Thank you. It's all Roman. It's all Roman's artwork.
Excellent. So if we can switch to the phone shot, we'll take a look at. See now, there you go.
Yeah.
So this is M. So we've, as you can see, folks, we have removed the backwards-facing camera, and we're doing HDMI. Ooh, chroma keying was almost right. No,
Nope.
not going to work.
Sorry, guys, I'm trying.
That's all right.
It's all right.
We'll let you continue to do that. So, but what you've got up here is EyeEm. So what it is basically what you'd expect. It's an app which lets you take photographs, lets you apply filters to them, and has a community for sharing those photos with your friends. I think particularly on Twitter and Facebook. It's got the links for that directly. So you can see here your front page is basically what you would expect. It's sort of a rolling list view of all of the photos that your friends have taken. And one of the things which they've done quite well here is they've got these tabs, these tab labels that you can see here.
Yeah.
And so as people are tagging them, you can go, oh, actually, I'd be interested to see more photos from San Benedetto del Toronto. You click that, and it will take you to a bunch of other things, show you on a map where it's at, and all the other photos.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah.
I quite like that. So this passes a big test of mine, which is, can you get lost in the app? Are you going to spend a lot of time just going, oh, cool, I want to see more of those sorts of photos from those sorts of people? One of the really key features of this app, which I really wanted to highlight, is that they've done a really good job on the UI of the actual picture display. And you can see here they've got this heterogeneous list view, or grid view, I suppose it is. Mm-hmm. And you can see here we've got different sized images all coming together to create something which is quite compelling to look at. And again, you can sort of click through to each of these.
Now, this isn't a particularly well accelerated list view, though. It feels
a
little janky.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's one thing. So, Dan Galpin's actually been working for about a year on some new techniques for doing faster list view rendering for photos. And hopefully one of these days he'll actually get that released.
Yeah. Well, this is a nice shot. This is the Googleplex. Although it says Googleplex 46, it's not. It's Googleplex 44.
Right. And in fact, we are in the room just above the honeycomb.
That's right. Just here. We're in here. So you can wave to us. If you're here at the right time, we would love to have people holding signs outside the window. That would be kind of cool.
We're on the second floor, so that would be insanely cool if they were right outside the window.
What, you think our fans don't own ladders? Do you think they don't have the dedication it takes? Do you
I assume they
think
own
we
jetpacks.
Don't have fans? That could be a problem.
So,
Anyway.
I'll tell you the first thing that strikes me about this app is this button down here. It looks like maybe that's how I'm going to take a picture.
It is.
Okay, and you can see, I think if you're on a different phone, maybe a Galaxy S2 or something, you would think this is a pretty cool design. Once you get onto one of these no-button phones, you realize this is actually kind of a bad idea.
It's very close, very close to your home button.
It's very close to the home button. It's very similar to the action that you're going to use to bring up Google Now. There's a lot of things that you can screw up with the camera button here, and that's, as we've mentioned before, that's one of the reasons that we sort of discourage tabs on the bottom, because you can very easily get mixed up with that bottom row of buttons.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and of course they do also have a menu button down here.
And this is the confusing thing, because they have something which looks a lot like an action bar, which has a menu button, and if you click that, you do get an overflow menu. And so they've done this thing where you've still got the menu button, and that brings up.
I wonder if they're using something like Action Bar Sherlock, and then they're not setting the API level high enough, because we actually don't document this correctly. It's changed since the docs were released, so you can't absolutely guarantee that thing will go away until your API level is 15.
Yeah, right.
And we had originally set 11.
Okay. Yeah. So make sure it's up to I thought 14, but let's make it 15 and just be safe. So that's one thing, you can get rid of that really easily, because it'll come back for devices which don't have which do have a hard menu button.
Okay.
So the other call out that I wanted to mention here is that they have implemented the draw pattern. I'm pretty sure they're aware that this isn't quite the right draw pattern, but I wanted to put it out there for other people who may be watching.
Yeah.
So this is following sort of that prototype G+ model, where the action bar all shifts across, and you can see that here, so everything's moved across. The right model is actually the way YouTube does it, which is that your action bar is consistent. So all of the stuff here along your action bar, this should stay here no matter what. And rather than having sort of a draw icon, you would have your application icon or logo with an up affordance. And so they're clicking that will then leave everything here as it is, and then just have this side part here slide out. So in the same way, but still having the action bar along the top. And I think, so that's kind of the right way to do it, and that's all listed in the design patterns on Android Design.
Yeah, and again, it's not that these guys got it wrong, it's that there wasn't a design pattern, and now there is. So.
They followed an example, which turns out we decided wasn't quite the right example.
All right. So now I'll tell you, this is driving me crazy, because I'm telling you, so we have two options. You can scoot over, or we can move the camera.
I can scoot.
Oh, okay. Wow, Reto does not want to move the camera.
Leave the camera alone, Ian.
Yeah, exactly. I fixed it last week, and now it's back
guys,
not fixed again.
Please don't touch my stuff.
Alrighty.
So otherwise, things here work as you'd expect. You have the ability to like. Nice little animation comes up there. You can add comments. They've got a pretty custom UI here with their own custom buttons, but it's consistent throughout. There's a color scheming. There's a design ethos here, which I think works. It passes is it different? Yes. Does it still look good? Yes. Let's try the share here.
Probably would have liked to see, so what is
standard share intent?
That's nice. Probably would have liked to see the actual share button. That's that's something that I think people are getting used to, and as we use that more, it becomes a consistent way to say I want to share something that's agnostic to services or what's hot this way. I mean, I think we've said it before, if this phone had been designed 5 years ago, everybody would have MySpace buttons.
Absolutely.
And we'd all feel like fools, wouldn't we? The other thing is, what is flag?
I think for inappropriate things.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Don't hit
flag it for nudity, yeah.
Exactly.
There is a naked Android right there. All right. Yeah, and I love this. The animation that you got to work
See, this is the problem when you have touch targets which are less than 48 pixels. People have trouble hitting them.
Small-fingered Reto wins again.
Boom.
So the only thing that I sort of miss is I feel like I'd like to see that carried out everywhere.
Sure.
It's always so sad when you see a beautiful user interface and it's been lovingly crafted, and then you get to the point where like the world ends and everything stops and you realize they ran out of time and it's just a normal Android system dialogue. And it's not just Android that does this. I've got plenty of apps on my PC that do this, but I think that especially for an app like this that's all about beauty, it's worth taking the extra time to make sure that the entire interface follows whatever design theme you've chosen, whether that's the stock Android design or something completely different.
All right, so let's have a quick look at the phone taking functionality before moving on. So we'll start using the camera because otherwise it starts to get a little bit confusing. Oh, yeah, it does work. Nice. So,
oh, wow. That's awesome.
Boom.
Yep.
That's a winner. That's your new...
Dude, that's my new album cover.
Absolutely. So I guess that's a tick. Yep.
Sure. No, it's just a mole.
And so we can go through here and apply all of the usual hipster filters. Let's see if we can make you even more jaundiced, because I think that's kind of awesome. There we go.
Yeah.
That's a win. So kind of what you would expect, except that it kind of stopped there. So that's a bug. Let's report that to the guys so that they... So
that could be any number of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what build are you running on this?
Whatever the latest public release
stock
build
retail?
is. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's move on. So that's EyeEm. Really
Awesome.
Popular app. Got a lot of great comments on the moderator link for that one. So we will be returning to this later on when we look at the prescriptions for a great app. But definitely a good start.
Let's take a look at PicsArt.
Let's. Boom. PicsArt. All right. Let's open that up. So right off the bat, we get the follow us on Twitter. So this doesn't come up every time the activity launches, but it comes up often enough to be a pain, particularly because all you have there is a follow button, and you can hit back to cancel it. But we're kind of anti-dialogues to begin with,
right?
And we're kind of anti-forcing people to do things, to help verify your own brand. Go rate me in the store 5 stars, that sort of thing, and follow us on Twitter. By all means, have a Twitter account which people can follow for news, but sort of trying to force them to do so, it's kind of overly attached girlfriend meme. It's like, follow me. No, this isn't cool. Like, people will find it, make it easy for them to do it, but you don't need quite that much validation, I think.
Yeah, actually, yeah, it is a little desperate. Okay, so they've got this nice, like, what do you call this? Like a city UI or some sort of urban UI,
area UI, something like that.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting pattern. I probably would have maybe taken out some of these.
It makes it kind of busy. There's a lot going on there. Reminds me a little of it's a shop. That's interesting.
But in general, really nice. I mean, the colors are nice and bright.
Look, right?
Yeah. Okay, so what can you do with PicsArt?
What can you do? So let's have a flick through. So basically, it's you have data. That's just lies. So basically, it's a combination of a few different kinds of camera apps. So you can take your photos and apply your hipster filters.
Excuse me.
Which we will do. Once again, let's try and get.
Let's get Dan. Yeah.
There we go. Very nice. So you can take your photos and apply your hipster filters as you would normally expect, and it's got a good selection of different standard things, and you can actually do quite a lot here in terms of applying different kinds of presets. Eventually, maybe.
It does seem to be taking a long time, but I do like their little rotating status bar.
Yeah.
Well, and this is one of those things too, where they're obviously not using the stock Android, but it is part of their branding.
Exactly.
And I know we harp on this a lot, but we get this question a lot. People will bring us an app that uses some. Let's call it a spade. Sometimes they'll pull in assets directly from the iPhone or Windows Mobile, and they'll say, "Well, that's just the way our designers like it." And I think that's not really cool. I mean, first off, it's not Android, but second off, it's not yours. It's somebody else's stuff.
That's right.
But when you take something that Android provides and then make it completely yours, so it works exactly the same, has a little cycling color so that you know what's going on, but has your branding in it, I think that's great.
Yeah,
I wish that
absolutely.
more apps would do that.
Absolutely, and then you get the advantage of having that consistency across all the versions of your app and everything else.
Now we also have the very consistent. This should be a built-in control right now. The hipster strip.
And they've actually got like a bunch of different ones. So they've got the standard FX, which you're applying there, and you can actually modify the degree of each of these, which is nice as well. Let's see, apply that. And I think you can then go through and apply a bunch of different kinds of filters. So they've got the distortion filters, they've got, all of those different things.
I think it's really interesting that compared to some of the other apps we've looked at, this app is really slow at applying filters. And I wonder if it's because they're not taking advantage of acceleration. In Android, especially in Honeycomb and above, you can use RenderScript or you can use the GPU to accelerate this sort of thing. And this is, most of these filters just boil down to convolutions of one kind or another. So you can, and Java is just not good at convolutions at all. Its memory layout is wrong. It doesn't have access to SIMD floating point instructions. I don't even think it has access to non-strict floating point instructions, which means you're going to be abiding by IEEE standards and getting into all sorts of performance problems. So you really, really, really don't want to write your filter code in Java or even in just generic C++. You really want to be using Neon or, for the best compatibility, actually just write it in OpenGL.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's we'll click through this. So we've all seen this sort of thing beforehand. So if you hit OK, then you have a bunch of options. You can either upload it to PicsArt, save it to the SD card, tweet it, export it, a whole bunch of things. Now, personally, I would kind of prefer if it just did something sensible by default, maybe save it to the SD card, and then take me back to a page where it just displays all of the things that I've saved and allow me to share or add to a timeline or whatever from there, rather than asking for this explicit thing.
Well, and it seems like a lot of people get this wrong. In a mobile app, and Reto, you had a great talk about this at Google I/O, you have the opportunity to make your app work like magic. Forget about saving and loading and knowing what file paths are and all sorts of things like that. If you look at good mobile apps, they just always work.
Yeah.
They do what the user probably wants, and they give the user a way to back out if it's not what they wanted. So it shouldn't be about saving, it should be about deleting things that have already been saved, because everything gets saved.
Exactly. You don't have this problem anymore where you've got a totally, really, really limited amount of storage and 1 or 2 extra photos is going to kill you. You can take a lot of photos before it's a problem.
Yeah.
Back in the day where, back in the DOS days, the only thing you had to identify a file was its file name and its extension. And so then you had to create these complex hierarchical folder structures in order to be able to find anything. So you're basically creating metadata out of your file system. These days, you can use the metadata. You can display the photos. You can do all of that sort of stuff.
I dare say almost no one knows or cares what the file names are for their photos now.
Exactly. Particularly not on your mobile where... See, this is all a little bit confusing. I've already saved it, and it just took me back here. So I'm just going to hit close and assume that it's kept it somewhere.
Good luck.
Yeah. So then it takes us back to the photos. We can continue taking photos or hit back again.
So they've done their own kind of camera view too.
They have. Yeah. So
that one I'm not.
From scratch.
Yeah, I'm not as excited about this just because I feel like this isn't quite as much their branding. I mean, I look at these icons and I'm like, yeah, I think I've seen those somewhere before.
Yeah, and they're really small. And
they really are.
They're not particularly high res either. I can see a little bit of mess around some of the vector art.
Well, Galaxy Nexus is always a good test case for finding out if you've got the right resources because it's a 720p phone. And same thing for, I think, Galaxy S3, Galaxy S2 are the same resolution. So it's an extremely high resolution display. And if you're just thinking to yourself, oh, these things look good on a 4-inch display, that's not always true if you're on one of these XHDPI devices.
So the other thing I want to point out real quick is that you're hiding my status bar, which is a pain, because we may have been going on for 15 minutes about this app and I don't know. So please don't. Please, I beg of you, do not hide my status bar. I want to know what time it is. I want to see my emails coming in. That is actually more important than your app.
If you must hide the status bar, at least let me tap and get it back.
Something to get it back, yeah. Like it's fine if you've got like a gallery view and I want to look at my photos in full screen and flick through it, sure, but give me that tap ability to get things back.
Yeah, a couple apps that do this really well are the e-readers. So Google Play Books, Amazon Kindle, both have really good status bar hiding and showing functionality.
going to see if we can get that. So we apparently can't. Oh, okay. So we've got some here. So we can see this is the community aspect of it. This is less janky in terms of the scroll, but we're still seeing a reasonable amount of time taken to load each of the pictures here.
Well, it's tough to get around that, right? Because we've got network latency, we've got the decoding. You know, these are probably not small bitmaps.
Well, and that's kind of the question here is like, you know,
and you can see actually once things end up being cached.
Right? It's keeping them there, which is nice.
I think that of the apps I've looked at, these guys are doing exactly the right thing. I mean,
Sweet.
you can't you know, overcome the laws of physics, but
really, or are you just not trying hard enough?
yeah, well, they're trying pretty hard actually.
No, it does look pretty good. And
it's very hard to see
test,
on
nice.
on the video on YouTube, but this is an extremely smooth scrolling experience.
Yeah.
The flinging feels just right.
Yeah, it's got the right physics.
It's all good. So yeah, bravo.
And you click through, and so this is a good experience. You know, you're swipe left, right, and you can see here the physics are right. It's moving at the same speed as my finger, but then I can just do a quick flick, and it feels about right. So they've done a good job.
And they've got the pinch to zoom. And then it's always an interesting question, what do you do once you've pinched to zoom?
And get to the edge.
But this seems fine.
I like that. I like the idea of once I get to the edge of the picture, as long as I'm able to take it back and undo my swipe across, I think that's the right approach.
I'm actually wondering if there's any chance that these guys are actually using Dan Galpin's library, because it does exactly this. It has
Possibly.
exactly this
Or Dan's
behavior.
maybe seen this and used it as a basis.
Quite
but,
possibly.
yeah.
I think that these guys are doing everything right as far as the physics there are a little bit.
It gets a little funny once you're bouncing off the edge.
Whee!
It's too much fun for this time of day. And again, we've kind of got this is interesting. So now we've got the menu button on the action bar here, but they've still got the legacy button down here, and that does absolutely nothing. So that's now confusing because it's ambiguous. You know, so at the very least, I mean, really the right solution here is get rid of this. Set your target SDK to 15. You know, at the very least,
set it to 16 now.
Yeah, exactly. It should always be the latest version. That's a good tip for you guys as well. Is always target the latest SDK. There's really no reason not to. It avoids your app.
The only possible reason not to is if you have no confidence that your app works on the latest SDK and you're unable to test on any new device or new emulator.
Yeah.
So I would have sympathy with, let's say, hardcore video apps that are trying to do streaming that's only been supported recently and is still a little buggy. But in general, your UI should support the latest SDK, yeah.
All right, so let's jump out of this because I'm not actually sure how much time we've spent, but let's have a look at Glimmr. So Glimmr is a little bit different. This is not your sort of standard camera replacement app. This is actually an app to browse Flickr. So in terms of functionality, much more simplistic here. You basically, you sign into your Flickr account, and then you can scroll through all of the pictures.
Nice. What does Daniel Pham have to say about racers?
You guys like that, right?
Well, yeah, it looks like you know how to party.
Yeah, that was actually at I/O last year. Not this year, but that's actually
right, because this year it was Train.
Yeah,
and nobody was partying.
I was close enough to Dave Navarro's leg to almost reach out and grab him, but I decided that was probably not a good idea.
You decided that would probably be a problem considering the restraining order.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So for those of you who didn't make it to I/O,
This is what it looked
feast your eyes on some of these shots.
That's Mr. Galpin.
Yep. Oh yeah, without his beard.
Beardless Galpin.
Yeah.
That's a little scary.
It is.
But
the master's having a party tonight.
But overall, it's a nice effect. Again, you've got the nice smooth swiping between items. You've got the standard action bar along the top here, which behaves in the way that it should. You've got the refresh icon, which works in place. Again, probably no need for an explicit refresh as a primary action, just because the photos aren't going to be updating that quickly. You can probably get away with coming up with some sort of sensible refresh model.
Now, you know what I love about this app?
Please.
This page right here. This is exactly what a photo-oriented list view should look like. Look at this.
Yeah,
they've done a great job.
Images.
It's all images. They've overlaid text that looks nice. It's big enough. It's readable. You know. Now, one thing that I haven't seen any photo that is just really, really bad for for text. Well, there's one.
Yeah.
But you can see they've overlaid some. Could be a little darker on this one, but yeah, exactly. And that's the whole idea, really. Is you make the photo everything. Don't put little drop shadows behind it. Don't put bars between it. Don't shrink the photo down so it's thumbnail sized. This just looks beautiful.
Exactly. I mean, there's all kinds of things here, and you straight away you can see where, you can tell from a photo, even from a relatively small portion of it, whether it's something you're going to be interested in exploring more of. And I think they've done a great job there.
The only disappointing thing is it feels like their caching isn't quite as good as the last app.
No, you can see here, as soon as you sort of get more than sort of half a swipe beyond the page you're looking at, you've got the white screen.
That is understandable, though. I mean, the view pager is sort of set up to do that, and you have to really go out of your way to do cache management if you want to serve lots and lots of images very quickly.
I mean, one thing you can do as well, which maybe an issue here, is make sure that you're downloading different sized images as well. So obviously you're going to have the double hit if you click on it and then you have to download the full size image, but at least you're dealing with a smaller memory footprint, faster downloads, faster load times, those sorts of things.
Now, right after that, all of a sudden I'm sort of disappointed because
back into text mode.
Right.
That's a shame.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is for your Flickr groups, I guess, and obviously the photos are maybe less important, but I would argue that, I mean, if it were LinkedIn, I'd be like, yeah, photos, whatever.
Sure.
It's Flickr. You're not there for anything else.
Exactly. So it feels like you could do the same thing here, where you're just taking that image associated with the group, make that your full background, and then maybe because there's more text and it's more important, you overlay more of that on top of the text. But when you've got images, like look at the way magazines work, right? Like the big advantage of magazines is that you've got rich color, full color. And with apps like this, if you have the pictures, use them. The pictures are awesome.
Yeah.
So this is looking pretty good. We don't have the hipster filters to go through, so I think maybe we'll move on to the next app, the last one which we're going to look at today, which is Camera Zoom Effects. So this is again so this is just your hipster filters. It's locked into landscape view, which we decided to leave this way to kind of prove a point, which is I don't always want to take my photos in landscape view.
True.
So your UI, particularly, you can see here, this is basically entirely a custom camera UI. They've drawn all of that themselves.
Right.
So there's really no reason here why they can't rotate the assets, right?
Absolutely.
And even these days, like I remember back in the days of Android 1.1, you had to take photos in landscape mode because there was no way of knowing what orientation the camera was at. That changed a long time ago now, so you can actually query the device to find out what the orientation of the camera is and rotate things so that they're sort of in the right aspect ratio and perspective.
It's also worth asking yourself if you really, really need to do a custom camera view, because whenever you duplicate system functionality, you risk looking out of date once the system updates. And in particular, you're going to miss out on any brand new functionality that the system gives you. Yeah. Now, for this, maybe they've got some really cool camera stuff going on. The problem is that a lot of the coolest camera technology in Android is being supplied by OEM libraries, so you may be missing out on something really, really slick if you completely override the camera.
That's interesting. If I hit front facing, it doesn't do anything. So that may be a bug.
Yeah. Well, that's what you get, right?
It's certainly freezing.
Did it just freeze, do you think? Or?
No, it's back. It just seems to take a while.
So the only reason I can think of that you'd want to build a custom camera and do the preview yourself is if you really need to do live preview. So do these guys do live preview?
I believe that they do. Yeah, if you hit the if you start it up and hit the effects button, I believe you're able to apply.
Okay.
Let's have a look.
All right. Let's see.
So
maybe this is coloring or
random effects.
All right. Oh, here vignette. Vignette's always good.
Okay, there you go. So they're applying that in real time. You can see that on the edge there.
Right. But you'll notice that a lot of the effects that you want are actually disabled in real-time mode. Yeah. Which isn't surprising. It's actually in ICS, we improved things, and in Jelly Bean, we improved them even more. I think there's one extra step that the GL team is talking about, but we've systematically been reducing the number of operations that it takes to do a live preview with effects. So originally, it was extremely tedious, and you had to bring things through Java. Now there's a single copy involved if you're doing the GPU acceleration on your effects. And in the future, at some point, we don't know exactly when, but the team thinks that they can get that down to 0 copies. So you'll be able to go directly from the camera to the GPU to whatever without passing through user mode code at all.
Yeah, that's excellent. And in fact, the app which I've seen which probably does the most intensive real-time effects is, I think, Paper Camera. They do a pretty good job of this.
Yeah, they really do.
Most of their effects at runtime, which is kind of nice.
Yep. And they've done a lot of work to make that successful.
I'm not surprised. So that's basically the way this app works, and it's got all of the standard filters that you'd expect, and you can apply them to photos either from the camera or from your gallery as well, which is nice. There's no sort of community, picture viewing, sharing functionality built in, at least not that I could find.
That's a shame because the share intent is really, really easy to do, and it works well for photos.
Well, share they've got. So they've got the standard share intent.
Oh, okay. So you're just saying that they don't hook into a
exactly.
like
There's no
the Flickr
like I
client.
started up for the first time and I can't flick through and look at other photos that people have taken and shared and that sort of thing, which makes app like Instagram a big part of that. You know, the
I'm
filters
so
are
on the fence about that because on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, you're right. Every time I pick up an app like that, it's really cool. On the other hand, I'm like, well, gee, don't I have social networks for that?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I kind of like the combination, particularly if it's not, if the community is really simplified. So it's not about anything other than taking a photo and letting other people see it. Because then you kind of get that experience of being able to interact and share with people who are using the same app, taking the same sorts of photos. I think it adds something to it.
I think you're right.
Okay, cool. So that's. Let's see, and again, we're hiding the status bar. Please stop hiding the status bar. I beg you.
Yeah, just make sure you have a way to get it back. That's so important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because here's the thing. Let's say I am completely immersed in your app. And let's say I'm also an adult with responsibilities. If I can get back to the status bar, I can find out what time it is, I can respond to a notification, I can check my calendar, I can do all these things. If not, then I have to leave your app anytime my phone beeps, which is annoying.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
some notifications I literally do not care about, but I don't know until I've looked at the status bar.
That's right. And if you're doing a show like this, you need to know what time it is to see if you're massively over time, which we always are. But at least we're not actually past the end time of our show yet, which is
That's
nice.
quite true.
So let's have a look. So
I've been actively sabotaging the show as we go on. You're
far.
Carefully, Okay, let's talk about
both sabotaging.
What are the prescriptions for camera apps?
Indeed. So these are the things that we're looking for. Having browsed through a bunch of these apps, the things that we found which makes them good. We always say that you can't contradict the design guide, and that certainly still holds true here. But I think one additional thing that we want to note is that it should really look good. I mean, these are apps which are targeted at people who like the way things look. Photographers, design folks, hipsters. It's really important that you create something that's immediately appealing. And you could see that at the beginning when I showed you the feature graphics, and I meant to point it out at the time, but completely forgot to. They all have feature graphics. They're all really compelling, rich,
they're really pretty.
Highly saturated images, which look great. And so that's the same sort of thing you want here. You want to make sure that the entire process is appealing. Similarly, you want to make sure that the app works on every image in the gallery, and at the same time works on devices without the camera. So for most of these apps, they allow you to add effects both to live photos on the camera and to things you already have on your phone. And so I want that to work on anything I can pick from the PicsArt gallery or from the phone gallery. And similarly, I want it to work on my Galaxy Nexus, on my Nexus 7. Even though it has no rear-facing camera, I'm not going to use it to take photos, but I have all of my PicsArt gallery images synced to it. So maybe I want to, apply all these filters on a bigger screen. It should let me do that.
Or you want to just browse your friends' photos. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of
really
the biggest problems that we had when we introduced Nexus 7 was photography apps that just assumed that if you didn't have a camera, you wouldn't be interested in a photo app, and that's just not true.
Exactly. And obviously you want to have the standard and some unique hipster filters, which I think most of the apps, which we looked at today, actually managed to do.
To me, it's not just about hipster filters, it's about ways to make the photo look good. So even if you have really unique filters, one thing that I think the most successful apps do is a little bit of automatic tweaking behind the scenes, maybe even without telling the user, just a little bit of auto level, auto white balance to try and make the photos look good.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. We all know that we're not expecting to be able to take great photos with our camera phones off the bat. You know, it's not an SLR. You can't tweak all of your manual settings and get it just so. So you're looking to concentrate on making sure you're getting a good shot, good angles, good framing, all that sort of stuff, and then having the software help you make it look like something that really represents it well.
Absolutely.
So let's give you some tips. So the first tip here is on using the camera. So you've got two options here, which we saw both of, which is either an app which uses a completely custom UI, which is what Camera Zoom Effects have done here. So you get that, you get that completely custom camera user interface, which I can't find. Let's see. Save and close. Again, save button. So here you've got the completely custom camera user interface. And I think the first app that we looked at, EyeEm.
By the way, I think that where we're seeing save, the correct verb to use is done. I guess that's not a verb, but that's the label you should be using. Because there is a case for having this intermediate, like we've talked about this with alarm apps. There is an intermediate stage where you are working on something and you don't really feel complete. You don't feel like, when I'm setting my alarm, I'm doing the hours, I haven't done the minutes yet. If it just, if I got a phone call then and my alarm got saved in that state, that would not make me happy.
Yeah.
Likewise, when I'm applying filters and doing a lot of tweaking, you want to have sort of a commit step, but you shouldn't call it save.
No.
Because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You should be saving as you go along.
Absolutely.
Because even though the user hasn't committed, they still don't want to lose work. But you do want to get to a point where you can roll back, essentially.
Yeah, and particularly when you're applying filters like this, it's all logical operations. It's all maths, right?
Right.
And so while you don't want to have to keep each of those operations for every photo, once you're done, you're done. But in terms of being able to save your progress, even before you permanently alter the image, you can just keep a track of exactly which effects, which filters have been applied, save that, and then you can always reapply it if they come back to the app after your process has been killed.
Right, so you should always be prepared for interruptions, even interruptions happen at a very inconvenient time for you.
Absolutely.
But you should never ask the user to manage storage or to do anything but commit an action that's already in progress.
Exactly. The only time you want to surprise a user is with delight, not with annoyance.
Absolutely.
So this is EyeEm. You can see when you hit their camera button, it goes to basically to the built-in camera. So this is using all of the functionality that you would have on the standard, built-in camera app, and then you can take a photo, and then it lets you retake it or cancel it or whatever you want to do. So that's your two approaches, and both of those are described in the link down there in the camera topic of the Android developer guides, and so they will tell you how to use both approaches. Let's have a look. So the other thing we talked about was conforming to the design guide, and so again we kind of have a few different approaches here with these apps. I think they've pretty much all, except for Glimmr, done some form of sort of custom user interface.
Yep.
And I think that's all right. In this circumstance, it kind of makes sense. You have a particular ethos, a design ethos, which you want to be consistent with on these apps. There are a few little bits and pieces. EyeEm, I think, is probably my favorite look and feel, in that it feels the most consistent, the most strongly branded, and they've done a decent job. They need to get rid of the legacy menu button down here. They need to make the drawer conform to our new guidelines. The search here, you should probably be using see, this is a little weird here where it goes off into its own search. This should really just be using a standard action bar.
Yeah, that's
search.
always annoying. Yeah.
But
so I think to a certain extent that's our fault, right? These guys have obviously tried to mimic the action bar pattern, but since our action bar support library is still not done,
it makes it hard.
It's tough.
Absolutely, but that's definitely something to keep in mind and something to look for. It's wherever you see sort of these standard patterns, and I have to admit we tend to have a different view on what a standard pattern is based on the fact that we're always using the latest versions of the phones and the operating systems. So
that is true.
for us, it's like, well, I've seen the appropriate search action bar thing for like a year. Why is it taking people so long?
Exactly.
So yeah, bear with us. But particularly, for these guys and for other people sort of implementing those sorts of patterns, you want search to be simple. Is kind of the key element here. Right now, search is 1, 2, 3,
Yikes.
type 4.
Well, and what's
until
terrible
get to it,
too is that it even looks like you should be able to type into that, right?
It's
this looks like
faux
some
action bar, faux search bar.
mean, horrible.
Yeah, and so if you take the alternative approach, based on the standard sort of action bar version, is that you will have one button here, and that'll expand, and then you type, and then you hit enter, and you're done. So it's sort of only a couple of actions, and you straight away have it. And if you do it that way, it will build your search into a bunch of ways, which will make it easy for you to leverage that across the system.
Yeah. Once again, I think the feel that I get from this app is that it had some good people behind it, some really good design, and they ran out of time, and I could tell you exactly where, on every piece of the UI, exactly where they ran out of time and decided, screw it, we're going to ship anyway.
That may well be the case. And in fact, we got, I think, a fair amount of good response from the Developer Strike Back show just yesterday. So we're going to invite the guys from EyeEm to join us next Thursday and see if they can give us a bit of feedback on exactly at which point they got to before they decided they had to ship it.
Yeah, you know what? Shipping stuff before it's done is for Microsoft program managers. Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy. All right, so I think all of the apps look pretty good. So that's, I think, something which was custom designed but looked pretty good.
I should mention, by the way, that I did work for Microsoft. Yeah. I'm not just slagging off.
Slagging off a competitor for fun. Yeah. No, you've been there. You've done that job. You've been that guy.
Yep.
All right, and so this is kind of the other approach. So you're looking at camera effects here, and that, again, is totally custom, but I feel like here, it's not really adding to it. It makes it a little bit harder to navigate, harder to understand what's going on, and for not a huge amount of gain. This doesn't look incredible.
Those touch targets are tiny.
Tiny touch targets.
Yeah, they're really, really difficult to use. So yeah, basically this is a performance disimprovement.
Exactly. This is going to make it harder for people to do. I mean, basically, if you've got an app like this, the intention is going to be that they use this instead of their camera app. Right. So every time they want to take a photo, it's going to be with this, including from within other apps. Yeah. So you need to make it at least as easy to use, as feature complete as the built-in camera app, which can be tricky. But in terms of UI here in particular, you want to try and make sure that it is easy to use and certainly not harder and slower to use.
Yeah, and again, can't emphasize this enough, especially for apps like cameras, voice recorders, the timers. Anytime that you're doing something where you may not actually be looking at the screen closely, or you may not be concentrating on the UI, it's absolutely critical that you test on some of these newer devices that have no hard buttons. Because if you look at the camera, were we on PicsArt?
We were on a camera effects.
Camera effects, sorry. If I'm taking a picture, what am I going to hit? What button am I going to hit when I try and take that picture? It's going to be sorry, we're apparently getting Boss Man stopping by here.
It's very strange things happening in the corner of our eyes.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Not quite sure why.
Oh, hi! I have no idea who you are. Okay, cool. Let's move on.
Indeed. So the next thing I wanted to point out was around something which you described earlier. So the hipster filters. So there's a bunch of ways you can do this. It's all basically maths, and Android actually has a pretty good tool for making maths work quickly. And that is RenderScript.
Right.
And so actually Jeff Sharkey gave a great presentation at I/O this year, which included a big section on how to use RenderScript to perform complicated computational mathematics. And in fact, the example he gave was being able to start creating hipster filters.
Yep. And in fact, we have a library of them
Indeed. So that check this out, and that will sort of help you to be able to get those standard things and give you the right processes to be able to create your own more interesting and innovative filters as well.
There's also some great resources out there if you're interested in GPU accelerating. RenderScript will actually use the GPU in some circumstances, but you're always better off just using OpenGL if it's something that the GPU can handle all by itself. So one of those two, or if you absolutely must, drop into C and use Neon, but that should be your last resort. And the reason it should be your last resort is because there is currently Intel phones on the market, there's MIPS phones on the market. You can't guarantee that you're going to be running on an ARM device. You could this year, next year, it's anybody's game.
Yeah. I think that's one of the advantages of something like RenderScript is that it really does all of that for you. So it's going to figure out the right processor infrastructure to take advantage.
Yeah, you know who wrote RenderScript is the guys we hired from NVIDIA. They were on the CUDA team, so
there you go.
They know their stuff. All right,
brilliant. All right, so let's move on. The next piece of advice was around supporting Picasa. So I do have, I think most of these apps did. I think there was one which didn't, and I'll have to refresh my memory with
Well, now by Picasa, we're talking about just in general.
Exactly. Basically, anything which comes up in the gallery is something that you can pick to apply a filter to. I expect that to work.
Right.
So I expect to be able to apply that filter to any image which comes back. Now,
so would it be correct to say then what we really want to do is support image providers?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Any image provider which can end up in my gallery. Yeah.
Right, because this isn't just about Picasa. Picasa is sort of the default because it ships with the device. Mm-hmm. But we encourage everybody to make image providers, and many OEMs do. We don't actually ship a Facebook image provider as part of Android, but many of the different OEMs, Samsung, Motorola, they have their own builds, and they have a Facebook image provider.
Oh, nice.
Flickr image provider, et cetera, et cetera. So you really want to be able to work with that so that the user doesn't see something in the gallery, see something that their phone is seamlessly offering without saying, oh, this is special because it came from service provider Y.
Exactly.
You see it all in a big list, and then if you select one and it doesn't work, people are just going to get frustrated by your app.
Exactly. And so that's what you want to get away from. Now, it turns out this is not entirely a trivial problem, so you really need to be to look at the URLs or URIs which you get back when you do the picking action. I had a quick look online. It turns out we don't have a great document on how to do this across sort of the different versions, which is something we should do. So I'm going to put that to our writing team to see if we can get something put together. In the meantime, I did find this blog post. I haven't validated it in detail. It did look like it was suggesting the right things. So you may want to check that out, and that will give you an idea of the right way to do that for Picasa at least.
Excellent.
See, now the lack of transparency is going to bite us.
Yeah, it is.
The other thing which we mentioned as well is we want these apps to work on all devices. Now it turns out after their latest updates, all of these apps did. When I tested them last night, a couple did not appear to be installable on my Nexus 7, but this morning they did. So thank you to those apps which pushed out an update late last night to make that happen. But this link below will take you to a blog post which will tell you exactly how to make sure that your app does work on devices which don't have a back-facing camera.
Now see, here's where we missed the QR code.
Well, that's true. It's all a learning curve.
Next week.
Next week, exactly. So definitely do keep that in mind. And so the reason why this is particularly important for cameras is because there was an assumption in the very, very, very early days of Android that every device would have a camera. It was part of the compatibility test suite. And since that has gradually relaxed over time to give more opportunities for differences in hardware, we have had to maintain that assumption that if you are asking for a camera permission, that must mean that you need a camera for the device. And that's no longer the case. And so you have to explicitly say, hey, I know that I have asked for the permission to use the camera, but even if the camera isn't there, that's fine. I'm still happy to run.
Right. You need to mark that optional in your manifest. And in addition, one thing that I personally find very confusing, and I think maybe other people do too, is remember that camera in this case means a rear-facing camera. A front-facing camera is something completely different,
Yeah, that's
which
totally
is not a
different
camera.
string. Yeah. It's front-facing camera, not camera.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know there's a lot of this stuff is going to seem weird and arbitrary, but it's really just there to ensure backwards compatibility. So where beforehand camera meant rear-facing camera, it just didn't say that it meant rear-facing camera, and we can't change the string because that will break all of the apps which have made that assumption beforehand. So it can get a little bit confusing, but that's why backwards compatibility is no joke. So, okay, so that's basically all of the things in terms of prescriptions and the advice there. So we've got a couple of minutes because the next show isn't starting.
Yeah, we're doing great. I thought we were doing an hour today.
Oh, we are. We've got.
Officially
we've
an hour.
got 8
right?
minutes.
All right. Well, let's get on to the recap then.
If you think that we're going to finish off in less than 8 minutes, then I think you're sorely mistaken.
Oh, lightning round!
So this is the prescription. So we just looked at each of these in more detail, and so let's take a look at each of the apps specifically and see how many of these they managed to do. Today I have not used green as a way of saying that they've done it. I've left it in blue so that it doesn't disappear into our background.
Okay.
So this is our first app.
Not that was a problem, by the way.
But but it was hard to see that meant good because it could be any color based on whatever was behind it.
Quite true. All right.
So what they did really well here, they offered the standard and unique hipster filters. They have the community of photography, which was really easy and fun to browse through, and it works on devices without cameras, so you can just enjoy looking at photos on whatever device you happen to have. What they didn't do was support every image in the gallery. So this was the app where when I clicked through to try and apply a filter to something from my gallery, which is all stuck in Picasa, I got I can't access this image. So that would be probably the number one tip for these guys would be please do make sure that works. And we're happy to help provide the information you need to make that happen. And it does look great without contradicting the design guide. I gave that one a yellow just because there's a couple of little things: the search bar, the draw pattern, the menu button, those sorts of things. Which
well, they re-implemented the action bar, which is always tricky because you're going to get something wrong, and even if you get it perfectly right, you're going to get broken by the next version. So hopefully they can move over to an action bar Sherlock or action bar app compat and start using something that Google's supporting directly, and that'll make their app easier to maintain, I think.
Exactly. So I think this was a great app. I really like the look of it. I can see why it's so popular. I think if you add that support for Picasa or for generic images in the gallery, then I think you're onto a real winner. Second app we looked at was PicsArt. Again, so this ticked almost all of the boxes. It supports every image. It offers the standard and unique hipster filters. You've got the community stuff there. Works on devices without cameras, so it's pretty good. Again, I gave it a yellow against the design guide. In this case, they've done the action bar correctly. They've got the search filters and everything else. I think where I got a little more concerned was around things like the camera, which again, they've got the custom UI. It doesn't seem to be adding a lot.
And the shutter button is not only tiny, but directly next to the home button, where my thumb will very easily slide over and hit that.
Very easy to hit.
But very bad idea.
So that's a concern. And I also found that once I started sort of tunneling into this app a little bit more, it started to get a little more difficult to navigate, a little harder to understand what the navigation patterns were, what some of the usability stuff was. So they've done a really good job on the front page. But it sort of starts to go downhill a little bit after that, once you navigate past that first home screen view pager.
Right. But I will say that they did a great job on their image list. They look really, really pretty.
That's a great example of the right way to do that. So, nicely done.
Absolutely.
Third app was Glimmr. So this was the Flickr viewer. So obviously that gets red dots for anything to do with applying filters, because that's not what this app does.
That's a little unfair.
Yeah, I was going to abstain.
Maybe it should be a black dot.
I should just remove them, right?
Right.
Just get them out of there because it's not really appropriate. But it does look great. It's great looking UI. It's all about the community of photographers. It works on any device. So again, it's a much more simple app than some of the others we looked at today. But they've done a really good job with what they've done.
Absolutely. All right.
And last off, we looked at Camera Zoom FX. So this didn't have the community of photography. Didn't have that ability to see other photos that people have taken with the great app. And I don't know, I like it if for no other reason than it shows you what's possible with a camera phone and with their app. So it's kind of great advertising for your own app if you have that in there. And similarly, the design guide issues were a little bit questionable in terms of how much value are you adding by creating this new skin for your camera. Really small icons, a little bit blurry. So I think they can do a little bit there to really make it a much better app. So that's all. That's all we wanted to look at in terms of apps today. We've got, I think, 3 or 4 minutes left to go, which is nice. We are going to pass on each of the apps we've looked at today to the guys, to Roman, Nick, and Adam, to look at in Android Design in Action on Tuesday at 10:30. So definitely check that out. I'm not sure which apps they're planning to look at today, but it'll be amongst those 4. And keep an eye on the Android Developers Plus page, and we'll announce exactly which apps those are, hopefully later today.
Absolutely. Once again, join us next Thursday when developers strike back against both Reto, myself, and Roman and his crew to see what they think of the suggestions and criticisms and potentially new designs that we've suggested to them.
So make sure, if you are one of the developers we talked about today, do make sure we have a way to get in contact with you so we can invite you to the show. And if you are one of our viewers and have questions for the developers, again, let us know in the comments to the events, to the G Plus event, and we'll be sure to put those questions to the developers when we have them live via Hangout in the studio.
Now, if you're a game developer, or you like games, or you like beer, or you're bedridden and just have nothing else to do, don't forget that the Friday Games Review is happening again today and has also moved to another time. We're doing that at noon Pacific, so in just about half an hour. Daniel Galpin and myself be doing that. I'll change from my lab coat into my hoodie, and we'll get down, we'll get jiggy, we'll do game stuff.
I'm concerned that you went the Red Bull during the wrong show.
You think maybe?
I think maybe you did. Or maybe that's when the Mountain Dew's coming out. I don't know.
You don't even know. I'm kicking it Elvis style, all right?
Wow.
This is you gotta get right in the middle. Yeah.
Wow. All right, nice.
I think if you guys are going to match levels, I think it's less about getting a Red Bull for yourself and maybe getting a Valium for the
That's true.
That might be true.
That might be a win.
We'll see. Yeah. All right.
That's pretty much it for us. We are going to look at travel booking and planning apps next week in the App Clinic.
Absolutely right. We're getting ready for the holidays, so we figure everybody travels during the holiday, either to be with family or to get away from family. So
true that.
It's about time to start booking those flights. We're going to look at booking apps, and then later on, we're going to look at travel apps, as in apps to help you when you're on the road. So
exactly.
Make sure you get that right.
So your currency converters, etc., later. For tomorrow, for next week, we want to have apps which help you make bookings, help you figure out where to go, those sorts of things.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely give us your suggestions in the moderator page and tune in same time as this week, next week. This is going to be the new time, unless it turns out that we've been talking to an audience of 3 when we may reconsider. That's pretty much it from us. Thank you very much for joining us at the new time, and thank you for everyone who nominated apps and voted for them. Without that, we would have a pretty boring show, or at least perhaps more boring than it already is.
All right.
My name's Reto Meier.
I'm Ian E. Lewis.
And we will see you all next week.
See ya.